The first time my boss told me I couldn't afford the lifestyle I was trying to live, he said it while adjusting my tie. That's the part one remember most. Not the words. The gesture. 2 fingers pinching the knot at my throat like he owned the fabric. Like he owned me. You gotta stop pretending, Colter, Vaughn Mercer said quietly, smiling at a room full of investors. People can smell debt on a man. A couple people laughed because that's what people do around money. They laugh half a second too late and too loud. I smiled too. That was the game at Mercer Keane Capital. Smile while somebody skins you alive. The rooftop bar overlooked downtown Chicago. Blue lights. Glass railings. Waiters carrying trays of tiny expensive food nobody actually wanted. I stood there in a rented tux holding a bourbon I couldn't pronounce while Vaughn worked the crowd like a politician running for king. He leaned closer. That watch fake too? I looked at him. No. Just old. He gave me this little pity nod. Worse than an insult. Sentimental poverty. Dangerous combo. Then he walked away laughing with 3 hedge fund guys who suddenly found him hilarious. Yeah. That didn't sit right. But here's the thing. Guys like Vaughn never think humiliation counts as a debt. They think it disappears into the carpet after the party ends. They don't realize some people keep receipts. I'd worked at Mercer Keane for 6 years. Officially, I was Director of Strategic Operations. Unofficially, I was the guy who cleaned up messes rich men created while pretending they were visionaries. Bad acquisitions. Investor panic. Compliance gaps. Internal turnover. I handled all of it quietly. Vaughn used to call me duct tape in loafers. Always smiling when he said it. The firm worshipped confidence. Loud confidence especially. Guys who interrupted people. Guys who used the phrase, killer instinct, before noon. Vaughn was their favorite religion. Tall, silver-haired, perfect teeth. The kind of man who never carried his own coffee because the universe apparently owed him assistance. Meanwhile I drove a 7-year-old Audi with a broken passenger vent and lived in a condo 15 minutes outside the city because I spent most of my 20s paying my mother's medical bills. Not that anybody at Mercer Keane knew that. People there treated personal struggle like bad tailoring. Keep it hidden. The only person who knew the whole story was Nessa. We'd been friends since college, back when both of us were eating ramen and pretending internships counted as meals. She worked in commercial litigation now. Sharp as broken glass. Impossible to intimidate. 3 nights after the rooftop party, she slid into the booth across from me at a diner near my condo. You look homicidal, she said. I look tired. You've got the quiet face. I stirred my coffee. Vaughn embarrassed me in front of clients. Again? And you smiled? Of course. She shook her head. One day you're gonna scare the hell out of somebody. I laughed at that. Mostly because I already had a plan. Not revenge. That's too emotional. This was leverage. See, Mercer Keane had a problem nobody outside executive leadership knew about. Liquidity. 3 months earlier, Vaughn pushed the firm into an over-leveraged commercial real estate position because he thought interest rates would stabilize faster than they did. Instead, the market tightened, 2 lenders pulled exposure, and suddenly Mercer Keane was floating on image instead of cash. I knew because I'd spent 4 straight weekends restructuring internal reporting to hide panic from investors. And while Vaughn was busy humiliating employees at cocktail parties, I noticed something else. The parent ownership group wanted out. Quietly. Desperately. Halbrecht Holdings owned controlling interest in Mercer Keane, but Vaughn treated them like silent furniture. He assumed they'd keep financing him forever because he made himself look indispensable. Classic mistake. Indispensable people don't usually need to remind everyone they're indispensable every 6 minutes. I discovered the opening by accident. A printing error. One of the executive assistants handed me the wrong board packet before a Monday meeting. Inside was correspondence showing Helbrecht Holdings had begun confidential discussions about divesting Mercer Keane entirely before quarter end. The firm wasn't dying. But it was vulnerable. And vulnerable companies get cheap fast when leadership mistakes arrogance for stability. That's when the idea started. Small at first. Dangerous enough that I actually laughed when it crossed my mind. Then I stopped laughing. Because the math worked. People assume wealth announces itself loudly. Real wealth usually walks in wearing comfortable shoes. My grandfather understood that. Most people thought he'd owned a few trucking depots in Indiana. Technically true. They just didn't know he quietly accumulated regional logistics infrastructure for 40 years and placed everything into a family trust before he died. My mother never touched it. Said she didn't want money changing how people saw us. After she passed, the trust transferred fully to me. I didn't tell anyone. Not coworkers. Not friends. Nobody. I kept living normally because, honestly, I liked knowing who people were before money entered the room. But sitting there in that diner with Nessa, hearing Vaughn's voice replay in my head, something clicked into place. Not anger. Clarity. "You're doing the face again," Nessa said. "What face?" "The one where somebody's about to regret underestimating you." I looked out the window. Rain streaked across the glass under yellow streetlights. You ever see somebody stand on a trapdoor they built themselves? Her eyes narrowed. "Colter, what are you planning?" "Nothing illegal." "That's not comforting." I smiled. It's also not impulsive. For the next 6 weeks, I became the calmest man in the building. That's what scared people eventually. I stopped reacting. Stopped correcting Vaughn when he took credit for my work. Stopped defending myself during meetings. Just nodded. Took notes. Observed. Meanwhile, through a private investment vehicle attached to my trust, I started quietly buying distressed secondary debt tied to Mercer Keane's obligations. Not enough to raise alarms. Just enough to create positioning. Nessa connected me with a boutique advisory firm in New York that specialized in silent acquisitions. Old school operators. No flashy branding. Just killers in navy suits. The lead advisor, Emery Sloan, met me in a quiet steakhouse and studied me for a full minute before speaking. "You don't seem emotional enough for this." "That's good, right? It means you might survive it." The process moved fast after that. Helbrecht Holdings wanted clean exits. Mercer Keane's lenders wanted reassurance. Vaughn wanted attention. Only one of those priorities was useful. Then Vaughn made his mistake. A big one. At the quarterly leadership summit, he decided to perform confidence instead of practicing judgment. About 200 employees packed into the auditorium. Caterers lining the walls. Giant projection screens behind the stage. Vaughn loved stages. He paced with a wireless microphone talking about discipline and personal branding, while employees sat there pretending morale wasn't bleeding out internally. Then he spotted me near the back. "Bad move. There's our efficiency wizard," he said. "Colter, stand up." A few people turned. I stayed seated for half a second too long, which annoyed him. "Come on, don't be shy." I stood. Vaughn grinned at the crowd. "You know what I appreciate about Colter? Loyalty. Guy's been wearing the same 3 suits since the Obama administration." Laughter. Small but sharp. He kept going. And honestly, that restraint matters. Some people chase lifestyles they haven't earned yet. There it was again. The lifestyle line. Repeated because he thought it killed the first time. I looked around the room. People avoiding eye contact. Others fake smiling because they didn't know what else to do. Vaughn tilted his head. Right, Colter? And that's when I noticed something. He genuinely thought this made him look strong. That was the fatal flaw. People like Vaughn confuse humiliation with leadership because nobody important ever embarrassed them back. So I smiled. Absolutely, I said calmly. Overextending yourself can destroy a company. If you've ever had somebody smile in your face while disrespecting you behind a microphone, hit that like button and subscribe, because trust me, this guy has no idea what tomorrow morning is about to cost him. The room shifted. Tiny thing. But you could feel it. Vaughn laughed a little too loudly. Exactly. He moved on. But 3 executives exchanged glances. Because they knew. Not everything. Just enough. The next morning, Mercer Keane employees arrived to an emergency calendar invite marked mandatory. 9th floor conference room. 8 a.m. sharp. Rain hammered the windows while executives filtered inside carrying coffees and confusion. Vaughn stood near the head of the table, irritated already. Anybody know what this is about? Someone whispered. I did. At 8:07, the door opened. Emery Sloan entered first alongside 2 attorneys and a representative from Halbrecht Holdings. Then came the silence. Not dramatic silence. Corporate silence. The dangerous kind. Papers sliding. Chairs creaking. Breathing changing. Vaughn frowned. What's going on? Emery placed a folder on the table. Effective this morning, Controlling Acquisition Authority of Mercer Keane Capital has transferred through consolidated debt conversion and equity purchase agreements. Vaughn blinked. Transferred to who? Emery looked toward me. The whole room followed. And honestly, that part felt weird. Not triumphant. Just heavy. I stood slowly. You can sit down, Vaughn, I said. Nobody moved. Vaughn stared at me like his brain physically rejected the information. What? The firm was acquired at 6:12 this morning. His face drained color. By who? I adjusted my cuff. Me. You ever watch a room recalculate hierarchy in real time? It's almost physical. People stopped looking at Vaughn first. That was the real moment he lost. Not the paperwork. Not the ownership transfer. The attention. That's impossible, he snapped. No, Emery said calmly. Just private. Vaughn laughed once. Short and ugly. You? You can't afford. Then he stopped. Because suddenly the callback hit him too. Lifestyle. Debt. Pretending. All of it. I walked toward the conference table slowly. No, Vaughn, I said quietly. I could always afford it. Nobody spoke. Rain tapped against the glass. One of the attorneys slid termination documents across the table. Vaughn looked around for support and found absolutely none. Because arrogant men build admiration, not loyalty. And admiration disappears the second gravity shows up. This is retaliation, he said. No, I replied. It's acquisition. He looked at me with genuine confusion now. Like he'd discovered a wall where he thought there was empty space. You planned this? I thought about the rooftop bar. The tie adjustment. The constant little cuts disguised as jokes. The years of swallowing disrespect because timing mattered more than pride. Then I shrugged lightly. You taught me leverage matters. That one landed. Hard. Vaughn left 15 minutes later carrying a leather portfolio nobody offered to help him with. Funny how fast status evaporates once assistants stop rushing toward you. Over the next 3 months, Mercer Keane changed carefully. Not dramatically. That was important. I kept most employees. Restructured executive compensation. Sold off the over-leveraged real estate positions before they sank further. Promoted people who actually solved problems instead of performing authority. Turns out morale improves when employees aren't treated like decorative furniture. Nessa visited the office after renovations started. She stood in my doorway looking around the cleaner, quieter executive floor. "You know what's annoying?" she said. "What?" "You were patient enough to become terrifying." I laughed. "Still driving the Audi?" "Yep." "The broken vent too?" "Probably forever." She shook her head smiling. Then she glanced toward the city skyline beyond the windows. "You happy?" That took me a second. Because revenge stories always pretend victory feels explosive. Usually it feels quiet. Like finally setting down something heavy you carried too long. "I think," I said slowly, "I just got tired of shrinking myself so other people could feel taller." Nessa nodded once like she understood exactly what that cost. A week later, I ran into Vaughn unexpectedly outside a hotel downtown. He looked older already. Not ruined. Just ordinary. He saw me and hesitated. Then he said, "You know what bothers me most?" I waited. "You never looked angry." I almost smiled. "That's because you were never the target, Vaughn." His forehead tightened. "Then what was?" I looked past him toward the reflection of the skyline in the glass doors. "The idea that I had to earn basic respect from people like you." For once, he had nothing to say. And honestly, that was enough. I got into my old Audi, turned the broken vent toward the windshield out of habit, and drove home feeling lighter than I had in years.